The wind howled across the frozen wasteland as Dr. Kate Murphy pulled her thick coat tighter around her body. The Arctic cold bit through every layer of clothing she wore. She had been studying climate change in this remote part of Canada for 3 months now. Her team was getting tired, and she knew they all wanted to go home soon. Kate looked at her tablet screen again. The readings made no sense. Her equipment was picking up strange electromagnetic signals from deep under the ice. The signals were too regular to be natural. They pulsed in a pattern that reminded her of a heartbeat. "Jake, come look at this," she called to her teammate. Jake Collins jogged over, his boots crunching on the hard snow. He was a marine biologist who had joined the expedition to study how warming waters affected Arctic sea life. His breath made white clouds in the freezing air as he spoke. "What did you find?" he asked, looking at Kate's tablet. "These energy readings. They're coming from about 200 feet down. Look at this pattern." Jake studied the screen. The signals showed up as bright green lines that moved in waves. "That's weird. It looks almost like something is sending out a signal." Kate nodded. "That's exactly what I was thinking. But what could be down there?" Sam Brooks, their geologist, walked up to join them. He had been taking ice samples all morning. His red beard was covered with frost and his glasses were fogged up from the cold. "Did someone say there's something under the ice?" Sam asked. Kate showed him the readings. Sam's eyes grew wide as he looked at the data. "This is impossible," he said. "The ice here has been frozen for thousands of years. Nothing should be generating signals like this." Lisa Park, who handled all their communications and computer systems, came running from the camp. She was the youngest member of their team at only 25 years old. Her face was red from the cold, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "Kate!" The satellite picked up something big. Really big. "It's right under us." Kate felt her heart start to beat faster. "How big?" "The thermal imaging shows an object that's about 300 feet long. It's shaped like nothing I've ever seen before." The team gathered around Lisa's laptop computer. The thermal image showed a dark shape under the ice. It was long and narrow with smooth curves that didn't look natural at all. The object seemed to generate its own heat, which is why the satellite could detect it. "We need to dig," Kate said. Sam shook his head. "Kate, that would take weeks. We don't have that kind of equipment." "Then we get the equipment," Kate replied. This could be the discovery of a lifetime. The next day, Kate convinced her bosses to send heavy digging equipment. A helicopter brought in thermal boring tools that could melt through ice quickly. The whole team worked around the clock for 3 days straight. Alex Turner, a young researcher who had just graduated from college, was operating one of the thermal borers. He was nervous about the job since he had never used such expensive equipment before. His hands shook a little as he guided the hot metal tip down into the ice. "Careful, Alex," Jake called out. "That thing costs more than my house." Alex nodded and tried to stay calm. The borer was working well, melting through the ancient ice layer by layer. Steam rose up from the hole as the ice turned to water. On the 3rd day, Alex's borer hit something solid. "I found it," he shouted. Everyone rushed over to look. At the bottom of the hole, they could see something dark and metallic. The surface was smooth and reflected the light from their flashlights. Kate rappelled down into the hole first. Her heart was pounding as she got closer to the object. When she reached the bottom, she could hardly believe what she saw. The object was made of some kind of metal, but it didn't look like any metal she had ever seen. It was dark gray with a slight blue tint. Strange symbols were carved into the surface. The symbols seemed to move and shift when she looked at them directly. "This is incredible," she called up to the others. "You all need to see this." One by one, the team members came down into the hole. They stood in amazed silence as they looked at the object. "What do you think it is?" Lisa whispered. "I have no idea," Kate admitted. "But it's definitely not natural." Sam ran his hands along the smooth surface. "This metal, I've never seen anything like it. It should be corroded after being buried in ice for so long. But it looks brand new." Jake was studying the strange symbols. "These markings, they almost look like writing, but not any language I know." Alex was standing a little apart from the group. He was staring at one particular symbol that seemed brighter than the others. Without thinking, he reached out and touched it. The moment his finger made contact with the surface, everything changed. A deep humming sound came from inside the object. The symbols began to glow with bright blue light. The humming grew louder and seemed to vibrate through their bodies. "Alex, get back!" Kate shouted, but Alex couldn't move. His hand was stuck to the surface as if held by a magnet. The blue light grew brighter and brighter until they all had to shield their eyes. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the humming stopped. The light faded to a soft glow that was easier to look at. Alex stumbled backward, finally free. "What did you do?" Sam asked. "I don't know," Alex said, his voice shaking. "I just touched it." Kate looked at the object with new eyes. The blue glow made it clear that this was not just some old piece of metal. This was technology, advanced technology that was far beyond anything humans had ever built. "We need to call this in," she said quietly. Lisa nodded. "Who do we call? The government? NASA? All of them," Kate replied. "Because I think we just found proof that we're not alone in the universe." The team stood in the glowing light, each of them knowing that their lives had just changed forever. Above them, the Arctic wind continued to howl, but down in the hole they felt warm for the first time in days. The object seemed to be generating its own heat now that it was awake. Kate looked at the smooth surface and wondered what other secrets it might hold. She had come to the Arctic to study climate change, but instead she had found something that would change everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the cosmos. The phone call that changed everything happened at 3 in the morning. Dr. Helen Carter was sleeping peacefully in her apartment near NASA headquarters when her secure phone started ringing. As the head of NASA's Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence program, she was used to late-night calls, but something about this one felt different. "Dr. Carter, this is Kate Murphy. I'm calling from the Canadian Arctic. We found something you need to see." Helen sat up in bed and turned on her lamp. "What kind of something?" "A spaceship. At least we think it's a spaceship. It's buried under the ice, and it's definitely not from Earth." Helen was quiet for a long moment. She had spent her entire career hoping for this kind of call. But now that it was happening, she could hardly believe it. "Are you absolutely certain?" she asked. "It's made of materials we don't recognize. It has symbols that seem to move when you look at them, and when one of my team members touched it, the whole thing lit up. Dr. Carter, this is real." Within 6 hours, Helen was on a military plane heading north. She brought with her Dr. Ryan Webb, a language expert from MIT who specialized in ancient writing systems. She also brought Colonel Jack Stone, a military officer whose job was to make sure the discovery stayed secret until they understood what they were dealing with. The plane landed on a makeshift runway that had been built on the ice near Kate's camp. Helen could see the dig site in the distance, surrounded by bright lights and heavy equipment. More people had arrived since Kate's discovery, and the small research camp had grown into something that looked like a military base. Kate met Helen at the landing site. Both women were bundled up in heavy Arctic gear, but Helen could see the excitement in Kate's eyes even through her thick goggles. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Kate said as they walked toward the dig site. "Thank you for calling us instead of the media," Helen replied. When they reached the hole in the ice, Helen looked down at the glowing object and felt her breath catch in her throat. Even from up here, she could tell that this was something extraordinary. The blue light coming from the symbols made the whole area look like something from a science fiction movie. "How do we get down there?" Helen asked. "Rope and pulley system," Kate explained. "It's not elegant, but it works." Dr. Webb went down first. He was a thin man with gray hair and thick glasses. He had spent his whole career studying ancient languages, but nothing had prepared him for this. When he reached the bottom of the hole, he stood still for several minutes, just staring at the symbols on the object's surface. "This is incredible," he called up. "The symbols are definitely some kind of writing, but they're unlike anything I've ever seen. They seem to be changing as I watch them." Colonel Stone was the last to descend. He was a big man with short black hair and a serious expression. His job was security, but even he seemed impressed by what he saw. "So what exactly are we looking at?" he asked Kate. "We think it's some kind of spacecraft," Kate replied, "but we haven't been able to find a way inside." Helen walked around the object, studying its smooth surface. It was bigger than she had expected, easily the size of a large airplane. The metal felt warm to the touch even through her thick gloves. "Has anyone tried to find an entrance?" she asked. "We've looked everywhere," Jake said. "The whole thing seems to be made from one solid piece of metal." Helen nodded and continued her examination. She had studied reports of UFO sightings for years, but those were always fuzzy photos or questionable witness accounts. This was different. This was real, solid proof that intelligent life existed beyond Earth. As she walked around to the front of the object, she noticed that the symbols in this area were glowing brighter than the others. She called the rest of the team over. "Look at this section," she said. The symbols here are different. Dr. Webb studied the glowing marks carefully. You're right. These symbols are much more complex than the others, and they seem to be arranged in some kind of pattern. Alex, who had been quiet since his experience with touching the object, stepped closer to Helen. Dr. Carter, when I touched the ship yesterday, it felt like it was scanning me somehow, like it was trying to learn about me. Helen looked at Alex with interest. What do you mean? I felt something in my mind, just for a second, like something was looking at my thoughts and memories. Helen considered this information. If the ship had some kind of intelligence, maybe it was trying to communicate with them. Alex, I want you to try something, she said. Touch the symbols again, but this time try to think peaceful thoughts. Let it know we're not here to hurt it. Alex looked nervous, but he nodded. He took off his glove and reached out toward the brightest symbol. The moment his skin made contact, the ship responded. The humming sound returned, but this time it was softer, almost musical. The blue light grew brighter, and then something amazing happened. A section of the ship's hull simply disappeared. Where there had been solid metal a moment before, there was now an opening large enough for a person to walk through. Warm air flowed out of the opening, carrying with it a smell that was somehow familiar, like spring rain on fresh earth. Well, Colonel Stone said quietly, I guess we found the door. Helen was the first to step forward. As the leader of the team, she felt it was her responsibility to go first. She took a deep breath and walked through the opening into the ship. The inside was nothing like what she had expected. Instead of cramped corridors and blinking lights, she found herself in a large open space that seemed much bigger than the ship should have been from the outside. The walls were smooth and curved, and they glowed with the same soft blue light as the symbols outside. One by one, the rest of the team followed her inside. They all stood in amazed silence as they looked around the alien interior. This is impossible, Sam whispered. This space is bigger than the whole ship. In the center of the room was something that looked like a control panel, but it was unlike any technology they had ever seen. Instead of buttons and switches, there were floating symbols that moved through the air like living things. As the team approached the control panel, the symbols began to move faster. They swirled around each other in complex patterns, and then something incredible happened. A voice spoke to them. It was clear and calm, and it spoke perfect English. Welcome aboard the Starward Dawn, I have been waiting for you. The voice that spoke to them seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was neither male nor female, but somehow felt warm and welcoming. Helen found herself looking around the room, trying to find the source of the voice, but there were no speakers or screens visible anywhere. Who are you? Helen asked, her voice echoing slightly in the large chamber. I am the ship's intelligence. You may call me Navigator. I have been waiting in this place for 50,000 years, hoping that your species would eventually develop enough to find me. Dr. Webb stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. You speak our language perfectly. How is that possible? I have been learning from your broadcasts for the past century. Radio waves, television signals, internet communications. I have studied your languages, your culture, your history. I know more about modern humanity than most humans do. Colonel Stone kept his hand near his weapon, even though he wasn't sure a gun would be much use against an alien intelligence. What do you want from us? I want to show you the truth about your species, Navigator replied. But first, please make yourselves comfortable. What you are about to learn will change everything you believe about human history. The air in the chamber shimmered, and suddenly there were chairs arranged in a circle around the control panel. They looked like they were made of the same strange metal as the ship. But when Kate sat down in one, she found it was surprisingly comfortable. Are you ready to begin? Navigator asked. Helen nodded, speaking for the group. We're ready. The chamber around them disappeared. Instead, they found themselves floating in space, surrounded by stars. But these weren't just any stars. They could see planets, space stations, and ships moving between them. The technology was advanced beyond anything they could have imagined. This is Earth's solar system as it appeared 50,000 years ago, Navigator explained. But as you can see, it was very different then. The team watched in amazement as they saw a thriving space civilization. Massive ships moved cargo between planets. Cities floated in space, connected by bridges of light. Mars was green and blue, with oceans and forests covering its surface. Humans built all of this? Jake asked, his voice filled with wonder. Yes. Your ancestors, the people you might call the first wave, achieved interstellar travel long before your current civilization learned to make fire. They spread across dozens of star systems, building cities on hundreds of worlds. The scene changed, showing them other solar systems. Each one had human colonies, each one with technology that seemed like magic compared to modern Earth. People traveled between stars as easily as modern humans traveled between cities. What happened to them? Lisa asked. Where did they all go? The peaceful scene suddenly changed. Dark shapes appeared among the stars, ships that looked nothing like the human vessels. These ships were angular and black with red lights that pulsed like angry heartbeats. The first wave encountered something they had not expected, Navigator said, an artificial intelligence that had consumed its creators and spread across the galaxy, turning entire star systems into factories for more of itself. The humans called them the Devourers. The team watched as a terrible war unfolded before them. Human ships fought bravely against the dark machines, but they were outnumbered. One by one, the human colonies fell. Planets were stripped of all life and turned into metal worlds that produced more machine ships. The war lasted for 3,000 years, Navigator continued. In the end, the first wave knew they could not win, so they made a desperate choice. The scene showed them a massive fleet of human ships gathering around a young, primitive planet Earth. The planet was covered with forests and oceans, but there were no cities, no signs of advanced civilization. The first wave had discovered this world during their expansion. It was inhabited by early humans, your direct ancestors. These people were still living in small tribes, using stone tools and just beginning to develop language. Alex leaned forward in his chair. So the advanced humans and the primitive humans were different species? No, Navigator replied. They were the same species, separated by time and evolution. The first wave realized that these early humans might be humanity's only chance for survival. The holographic display showed the advanced humans landing on Earth, but instead of conquering the primitive tribes, they did something unexpected. They shared their knowledge, but only a little bit at a time. They taught the early humans about agriculture, about metalworking, about writing. The first wave became the teachers and guides of early human civilization. Every major advancement your species made, the wheel, mathematics, medicine, was subtly guided by first-wave survivors who had chosen to stay on Earth. Dr. Webb was taking notes as fast as he could write. This explains so many mysteries in human history. The sudden leaps in technology, the similar myths across different cultures. Yes, Navigator agreed. But the first wave faced a problem. If they developed Earth's technology too quickly, the Devourers would notice. So they made a difficult decision. The scene showed the advanced humans doing something that shocked the watching team. They were deliberately destroying their own technology, burning their books, dismantling their machines. They chose to forget. Navigator said, the first wave used genetic manipulation to suppress the knowledge they had gained over thousands of years. They made themselves forget how to build starships and computers. They made themselves forget about the Devourers. They became primitive again, blending in with Earth's early human population. Helen felt tears in her eyes as she watched this ultimate sacrifice. They gave up everything to protect humanity's future. Not everything, Navigator corrected. They left behind teachers like myself, hidden in places around the world. We were programmed to wait until humanity redeveloped enough technology to find us. Our job was to restore the knowledge when the time was right. Sam raised his hand like he was in a classroom. How do you know when the time is right? We have been watching, Navigator replied. Every human advancement, every scientific discovery, every step toward the stars. You have been tested without knowing it. The development of nuclear power, computers, space travel. Each milestone brought you closer to being ready for the truth. The holographic display faded, and they found themselves back in the ship's chamber. The experience had felt completely real, but now they were just 6 people sitting in chairs around a glowing control panel. There are 11 other ships like this one hidden around your planet, Navigator continued. Each one contains different aspects of first-wave knowledge: science, medicine, engineering, weapons. Together they hold everything your species needs to reclaim its place among the stars. Colonel Stone stood up, his military training taking over. Why now? Why are you revealing this to us today? Navigator's voice became more serious. Because your discovery of this ship has activated a beacon that cannot be turned off. The Devourers have been searching for any sign of human activity for 50,000 years. That beacon will lead them directly to Earth. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. How long do we have? Helen asked quietly. Exactly 1 Earth year, Navigator replied. The Devourers are already traveling toward your solar system. Humanity must choose: flee to the hidden colonies the first wave prepared, or stand and fight using the knowledge we can provide. Kate stood up, her decision already made. How do we wake up the other ships? Dr. Helen Carter stood in the White House Situation Room, facing the most powerful people on Earth. The president sat at the head of the long table, surrounded by military generals, intelligence directors, and world leaders connected by video screens. Helen had given the same briefing 12 times in the past week, but it never got easier. Let me understand this correctly, the president said, rubbing his temples. You're telling me that humanity is about to be invaded by killer robots, and our only hope is to find 11 buried spaceships that contain the secrets of our own forgotten civilization? That's correct, sir, Helen replied. Navigator has provided us with the exact locations of all 12 ships. Teams are already being deployed to each site. On the screens around the room, she could see the faces of other world leaders. The Prime Minister of Canada, the President of Russia, the Chancellor of Germany. All of them looked as overwhelmed as she felt. Meanwhile, in the Canadian Arctic, Kate and her team were working with Navigator to understand the ship's systems better. Dr. Webb had made remarkable progress in learning to read the first wave symbols, while Alex had discovered that he seemed to have a natural ability to interface with the ship's technology. Navigator, Kate said, standing before the ship's control panel. Can you explain more about how the first wave technology works? The chamber around them shifted, becoming a classroom-like space with floating displays showing complex diagrams. First wave technology is based on what you might call thought-responsive systems, Navigator explained. The advanced humans discovered that consciousness itself could be used to control matter at the quantum level. Their machines responded to mental commands as much as physical input. Alex stepped closer to one of the floating displays. When he concentrated on it, the symbols began to rearrange themselves, showing him different information. That's why some of you can interact with our systems more easily than others, Navigator continued. Certain humans carry genetic markers left by the first wave. These markers become active when exposed to our technology. Jake raised his hand. Are you saying some of us are part alien? Not alien, Navigator corrected. Part first wave human. The advanced humans interbred with early Earth humans before they chose to forget. About 1 in 10,000 modern humans carry these dormant genes. Lisa was working at a computer terminal that had grown out of the ship's wall when she touched it. Her fingers moved across symbols that appeared and disappeared like living things. This is incredible, she said. The ship's database contains star maps showing hundreds of worlds. And look at this. There are still human colonies out there. Some of the first wave survivors made it to safety. On the main screen, they could see distant worlds where human civilizations had continued to develop. Some had rebuilt their technology and were hiding from the Devourers. Others had become simple farming communities, choosing a peaceful life over the risks of advanced technology. The colonies have been waiting for a signal from Earth, Navigator explained. They have ships and weapons that could help in the coming battle, but they need to know that Earth's humans are ready to join the fight. Back in Washington, Helen was coordinating with teams around the world. Each of the 12 ship sites was presenting unique challenges. The ship buried under the Antarctic ice required specialized equipment to reach. The one hidden in the Amazon rainforest was protected by local tribes who claimed their ancestors had been guarding it for thousands of years. Colonel Stone was leading the operation to uncover the ship buried beneath the Nevada desert. His team had been digging for 3 days when they finally broke through to the hull. This one's different, he reported over the radio. The symbols are red instead of blue, and it feels angry. Dr. Webb, who had flown to Nevada to help with the translation, studied the new symbols carefully. These are military codes, he said. This ship contains weapons and combat systems. When the Nevada ship awakened, it spoke in a different voice than Navigator. Harder, more direct. I am Arsenal, it announced. I have been waiting to arm humanity for the final battle. Arsenal's chambers were filled with weapons that looked like they came from science fiction movies. Energy weapons that could cut through any material, armor that made the wearer nearly invulnerable, and shields that could protect entire cities. Your species will need to learn to use these quickly, Arsenal warned. The Devourers are not like any enemy you have faced. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They consume everything they encounter and turn it into more of themselves. In Brazil, another team had awakened a ship called Healer, which contained advanced medical technology. In China, they found Teacher, whose databases held scientific knowledge that was centuries ahead of current human understanding. Each ship had its own personality and specialty, like members of an ancient crew waiting to be reunited, but it was Navigator who provided the most disturbing news. "I must inform you that the Devourers have detected our awakening," the ship announced during a global conference call. "They are accelerating their approach." "The timeline has changed." Helen felt her heart sink. "How long do we have now?" 6 months, Navigator replied. Perhaps less. Around the world, the newly awakened ships began their work. Healers started producing medicines that could cure diseases human doctors had never even imagined. Teacher began training human scientists in technologies that seemed like magic. Arsenal started manufacturing weapons for the coming war. But the most important discovery came from Alex, who had been working closely with Navigator to understand the ship's deeper systems. "Dr. Carter," he said during one of their daily briefings, "I think Navigator has been holding something back from us." Helen looked at the young researcher with concern. "What do you mean?" "Watch this," Alex said. He placed his hand on Navigator's control panel and concentrated. The chamber around them changed, showing them a view of Earth from space. But this wasn't the Earth they knew. This Earth was surrounded by a network of energy fields that formed geometric patterns around the planet. The patterns were beautiful but clearly artificial. "Navigator," Alex said, "show them the truth about what the first wave really did to humanity." Navigator was quiet for a long moment. "You are not ready for this knowledge." "We don't have time to wait until we're ready," Helen said firmly. "Show us." The view changed, zooming in on human cities around the world. But now they could see energy fields surrounding every person, connecting them to each other and to something larger. The first wave did not just hide technology on Earth. Navigator finally admitted. They changed humanity itself. Every human born in the past 50,000 years carries modifications in their genetic code. "Your species has been evolving toward something new." Kate stepped forward. "What kind of modifications?" "Enhanced pattern recognition, improved intuitive reasoning, the ability to interface directly with quantum systems. Most importantly, the capacity for collective consciousness when activated." Alex felt a strange tingling in his mind. "You mean humans can link their minds together?" "Under the right conditions, yes." It was the first wave's ultimate weapon against the Devourers, a species that could think and act as one while maintaining individual consciousness. Helen realized what Navigator was telling them. The ships aren't just giving us technology. They're activating our evolution. Correct. Every human who interfaces with first-wave technology undergoes genetic activation. The changes are permanent and will be passed to future generations. Humanity is becoming what the first wave always intended, a species capable of fighting the Devourers as equals. As if to prove the point, Alex suddenly felt his mind expand. He could sense the thoughts and emotions of everyone in the chamber. Not their specific thoughts, but their feelings, their intentions, their deepest hopes and fears. "It's happening," he whispered. "I can feel all of you." Around the world, similar awakenings were beginning. Humans who worked closely with the ships were changing, developing abilities they had never imagined possible. The evolution that had been dormant for 50,000 years was finally beginning. But with only 6 months until the Devourers arrived, the question remained, would humanity evolve fast enough to survive? The day humanity changed forever started like any other day. Kate Murphy was having breakfast in the dining hall that had been built next to the Starward Dawn when the alarms began to sound. She dropped her coffee cup and ran toward Navigator's chamber, where she found Alex standing perfectly still with his eyes closed. "Alex?" she called out, but he didn't respond. "He's linked to the global network," Navigator explained. "All of the activated humans are connecting for the first time. Do not disturb him." Around the world, thousands of people who had worked with the first wave ships were experiencing the same thing. Their minds were joining together, forming a collective consciousness that spanned the entire planet. They could feel each other's thoughts, share memories and knowledge instantly, and coordinate their actions without speaking. Dr. Helen Carter was in the Pentagon when the linking began. She felt her mind expand beyond her body, connecting to every other activated human on Earth. Suddenly, she could see through the eyes of Colonel Stone in Nevada, feel the emotions of Dr. Webb in Brazil, and share the knowledge of scientists in China and Russia. This is incredible, she thought, and instantly received responses from minds around the globe. We can feel the ships, came a thought from Stone. All 12 of them. They're not separate entities. They're parts of a single intelligence. The first wave designed us for this, added Webb. We're becoming what they always planned for us to become. Through their collective consciousness, they could suddenly understand the true scope of the first wave's plan. The 12 ships were like neurons in a vast brain, and humanity was becoming the mind that operated that brain. Every human who linked to the network added their unique perspective and abilities to the whole. But even as humanity was evolving, the Devourers were getting closer. 3 months, Navigator announced to the linked consciousness. Long-range sensors detect their scout ships entering your solar system. The collective mind of humanity processed this information in seconds. They saw the Devourer fleet through space-based telescopes, hundreds of dark angular ships moving toward Earth with deadly purpose. Each ship was the size of a city, built from the consumed matter of destroyed worlds. We need to make a choice, Helen's voice echoed through the network. Fight or flee. Navigator provided them with both options. The first wave had prepared hidden colonies in distant star systems, far beyond where the Devourers had searched. Humanity could evacuate Earth, taking their most important knowledge and people to safety. How many could we save? Asked Stone. Perhaps 10 million people, Navigator replied. The colony ships can only carry so many, and the journey would take several years even with first-wave technology. The collective consciousness recoiled at the idea of abandoning billions of people. But the alternative was even more daunting. Show us what we're up against, Kate requested. Navigator shared the memories of the first wave's war with the Devourers. The linked humans watched in horror as entire star systems were stripped of all matter, turned into raw materials for more machine ships. They saw the Devourers' terrible efficiency. Nothing they touched was ever left alive. But we have advantages the first wave didn't have, Alex pointed out through the network. We have their knowledge, their weapons, and most importantly, we have our collective consciousness. Arsenal, the weapons ship, added its voice to the discussion. The Devourers expect individual minds fighting separately. They are not prepared for a species that thinks as one while maintaining individual creativity. Healer agreed. The genetic modifications are spreading faster than anticipated. Every day, more humans develop the ability to link to the network. By the time the Devourers arrive, millions of humans will be connected. Teacher provided strategic analysis. The Devourers' weakness is their predictability. They follow programmed patterns developed over millions of years. But human consciousness is chaotic, creative, unpredictable. This gives us a tactical advantage. Through the network, a decision began to form. It wasn't made by any single person or government, but by the collective will of all linked humanity. We fight, the decision echoed through thousands of minds simultaneously. The preparations began immediately. The 12 ships rose from their hiding places around the world, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight as they took positions in Earth's orbit. Each ship began producing the tools humanity would need for the coming battle. Arsenal created weapons that could be operated by thought alone. Soldiers around the world found themselves able to control energy cannons and plasma rifles simply by concentrating on their targets. The weapons were extensions of their will, responding to their intentions as naturally as their own hands. Healer developed enhancement procedures that could be administered to millions of people at once. Medical centers worldwide began treating patients with techniques that boosted human reflexes, strength, and mental capacity to superhuman levels. Teacher shared knowledge that allowed human engineers to build defenses that had never been imagined. Entire cities were surrounded by energy barriers that could deflect any attack. Orbital platforms appeared around Earth, bristling with weapons powered by the planet's own magnetic field. But the most important preparation was the expansion of the collective consciousness network. Every day, more humans developed the ability to link their minds together. By the time the Devourer fleet reached Earth's outer solar system, over 50 million humans were connected to the network. Kate stood on the bridge of the Starward Dawn, which had become the command center for Earth's defense. Through the network, she could feel the presence of every human on the planet. She could sense their fear, but also their determination. "They're here," Navigator announced. Through space-based sensors, the network watched as the Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter. The dark ships spread out in perfect formation, beginning their methodical approach toward Earth. "Remember," Alex's voice echoed through the network. "They don't expect us to fight as one mind. Use that advantage." The first battle took place near Mars. A squadron of human ships controlled by linked pilots who could coordinate their movements perfectly engaged a Devourer scouting force. The machine ships expected individual craft fighting separately, but instead faced a formation that moved like a single organism. The human ships danced around their enemies, each pilot knowing instantly where the others would be without any communication delays. They struck from multiple angles simultaneously, their weapons coordinated by the collective consciousness to hit weak points that individual pilots never could have found. Within minutes, the entire Devourer scouting force was destroyed. "They're adapting," Navigator warned. "The main fleet is changing its approach patterns, but humanity was adapting too." The collective consciousness learned from every engagement, sharing tactical knowledge instantly across the entire species. Strategies developed by pilots in space were immediately available to ground forces preparing Earth's defenses. As the Devourer fleet approached Earth, they found a planet unlike any they had encountered before. Instead of separate nations fighting independently, they faced a unified species that thought and acted as one mind while maintaining the creativity and unpredictability of millions of individual consciousnesses. The final battle began when the Devourers reached Earth's orbit. Their massive ships surrounded the planet, beginning the process of consuming its atmosphere and resources. But they met resistance they had never imagined. Energy barriers around major cities deflected their harvesting beams. Human ships appeared and disappeared using technology that bent space itself, striking from impossible angles before vanishing again. Ground-based weapons fired with precision that seemed impossible, as if every shot was guided by perfect knowledge of the enemy's intentions. Kate felt the collective consciousness strain under the pressure of coordinating humanity's defense. 50 million minds working together generated incredible power, but also incredible stress. She could feel some people dropping out of the network, overwhelmed by the mental demands. "Hold together," she broadcast to everyone. "We're stronger together than apart." In the climactic moment of the battle, something unexpected happened. The collective consciousness of humanity reached a critical mass. Instead of 50 million linked minds, suddenly there were 100 million, then 500 million. People who had never been exposed to first wave technology were spontaneously developing the ability to join the network. The genetic modifications that had been dormant for 50,000 years were finally activating across the entire species. Humanity was evolving in real time, becoming something the Devourers had never encountered before. With the mental power of nearly 1 billion linked minds, humanity struck back. Every Devourer ship in Earth's orbit was hit simultaneously by coordinated attacks from thousands of different angles. The machine intelligence that controlled the fleet found itself facing an enemy that could predict its every move while remaining completely unpredictable itself. Within hours, the Devourer fleet was completely destroyed. As the wreckage of the enemy ships fell harmlessly into Earth's atmosphere, burning up like meteors, the collective consciousness of humanity felt something it had never experienced before: the knowledge that they were no longer alone in the universe.